We brought him in, and when he came in, he was literally rocking because he was frightened. He was having a PTSD episode. After 20 minutes on this, he was calm. His nervous system had come out of fight or flight into a resting state. He was smiling, and he couldn't believe it. And so he kept coming and kept coming. And now he's fine. He goes out, he walks his dog. He's a changed man. And that's just the PTSD program on this BioCharger.
Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hello and welcome back to my channel. The medicine of the future will be medicine of frequencies, Albert Einstein famously said. And the idea that the human body responds to frequency is now not confined to physics. It's steadily entering the world of modern healthcare. And today we're speaking with Siobhan from the Frequency Medicine Center, who's at the forefront of this growing movement, frequency-based healing technologies, where the aim is simply not to address the symptoms, but to really get to the root of whatever's going on in the body mind to optimize cellular function and enhance vitality. Welcome, Siobhan. So lovely to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And you've got this amazing looking technology behind you. So yeah. I can't wait to hear all about that.
Yeah, this is this is a BioCharger. It's one of our it's one of the most popular of our frequency machines.
Do you feel that we're at the early stages of a shift in the way that we approach healthcare and prevention of disease?
Absolutely. I do think we're at a shifting point. So much has changed since, in the last 6 years, really, without going into detail. So much has changed in the way people think about health, in the way people want to take control of their health. I heard a quote the other day that health is sovereignty. Health and sovereignty go together, and that really resonated with me because it is about the sovereignty. Part of sovereignty is to really take control of your health, be responsible for your health, have a holistic viewpoint about health. It's not just about anymore. It's not just about going to the doctor and getting a pill or having surgery. It's about seeing how health declines, seeing the mechanisms of how it declines, and noticing that, what you eat, what you put into your body is so important. The quality of what you put into your body is important. Having the right vitamins and minerals and having good, pure water. I mean, before you even start with frequency medicine, just the basics, not too much fried food, not too much of the bad stuff. And we all know what the bad stuff looks like. Try to cut sugar out of your diet as much as you can, because sugar is the main driver of so many illnesses. Too much carbohydrate in the Western diet is a driver of illness. And once we understand that, and once we really sort of take charge of our addiction to carbohydrates and sugars and the food that is not necessarily good for us, we can really start to turn our health around. Where that's difficult, frequency medicine can then start to support, because some people have huge health challenges and need support with those. So we look at the holistic value of, taking everything into consideration and living a healthy life.
Yeah, so I love that, what you've mentioned about sovereignty, because we've really kind of outsourced so many things, haven't we, yeah, including our health. And I know I'm involved with the People's Health Alliance, and that's one of the key things, is that self-responsibility and coming back to that sense of, what's right for me, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting with food, isn't it? Because there's lots of different ideas in a way of what is healthy. Obviously, sugar and fried food is pretty standard. And I'd love to talk about that when we talk about your technologies, because I understand the bioresonance can actually help with that as well, like fine tuning those treatment plans.
Yes.
Which is really, really amazing. I'd love to start with how you got into all of this, because not everyone has a machine like that sitting in their room.
No. Well, before the lockdown, I was engaged with a business selling EMF protective clothing, and I'd done a lot of research around what the harmful EMFs are doing to our bodies. And with the advent of 5G and 4G plus and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi and all these extra smart meters, the electrosmog is getting so thick, if you like, and sleep is becoming such a problem for people. And when they can't sleep, if they're in an EMF field, the melatonin can't be activated in quite the same way. So the melatonin doesn't only induce sleep, it also regulates so much in the body, and it helps to repair the body during sleep. So it's so important to I thought then, back in 2018, 2019, that shielding ourselves from the EMFs was important. And I knew a lot of EMF sensitive people who had no choice, that some were confined to their homes. 100,000 people in the UK alone, and it's probably growing, are confined to their homes because of EHS. So I was looking at that and silver-lined clothing and material and working with people who would shield houses. And increasingly, I started to think that that's not enough. You can't live in your house, or you can't just not go out. There has to be a more resilient way of managing that. And so the first thing that my partner and I got was a PEMF bed. And this was way back in 2019, we got this bed. And my partner is electrosensitive. So we found that when she went on the PEMF bed and did the sleep programs, it was really beneficial. She got good quality sleep. And it also helped in pain reduction, inflammation reduction. It helps with arthritis. Lots of different things were helped by this PEMF bed. And I got a sort of top of the line one. I wanted to spend money and get a good one that would last. And at first we were just using it ourselves, but then we quickly started using it on other people and found that, it had great benefits. And so my partner and I started looking into what other machines might actually benefit people. We started, looking at all ways that the harmful EMF can be harmonized. So that there were, things that you can put on your living room table that can harmonize the area. But there are also machines like the BioCharger, which specifically have recipes for electrosensitives. And we are all electrosensitive to a certain degree. I mean, some people are just more sensitive than others, and that's...
Well, we haven't had the time, have we? I mean, evolution, to adjust to this. Our body minds are probably in a state of shock and stress, from this. Yes. And you spoke earlier about food and how these different factors can break down that ability for the body to stay in balance, and stress is an obvious one, isn't it?
Yes.
And our current world that we're living in, with all the stuff that's going on, is activating that as well as the EMF. So yes, anything that can support us to come back into balance so we move out of stress is going to be extraordinarily helpful.
Yes, absolutely. And there are lots of ways that frequency can help. I mean, I've looked into some of the studies around frequency, and you've got the Solfeggio tones. There have been studies done into the beneficial effects of Solfeggio tones, and they all have a beneficial effect. For example, 174 hertz reduces pain, releases tension, reduces migraines, backache. I've got some written down here. 396 helps remove subconscious fear, guilt, grief. 285 helps with cell regeneration, tissue recovery. And there are lots of other frequencies that have been studied now. More studies need to be done. I mean, it's an area that is little studied, but the studies that have been done and pilot studies that have been done have shown remarkable effects. So more studies need to be done that would replicate those effects. But for myself, I don't need to see studies, because I have seen firsthand and experienced firsthand how things like the BioCharger, frequency-specific microcurrent, which you have used, Sarah, have helped me to, recover from frozen shoulder or, knee injuries, all sorts of things, plantar fasciitis. I've had such success with using the frequency-specific microcurrent, which is a different way of delivering frequency. There's a few different machines we use.
So can you talk us through the different technologies that you use? Let's start with the BioCharger, as it's right there.
Okay. Well, what you see here, the red coil, it's lots and lots of copper coils. And then there's a sort of a donut shape at the top. That's a Tesla coil based on Tesla's technology. And what a Tesla coil does, it increases the voltage of field of the electricity that's coming into it. It uses normal household electricity, but it increases that voltage. Every time you go around the coil, the voltage increases until millions of electrons are stored and then emit from the donut at the top in a huge toroidal field of voltage. And what that does, it also has frequencies, but what the voltage does is our cells, every cell of our body, of which there are trillions, all of the cells have a membrane, like a membrane which is like the border of the cell. And in that membrane are stored negative ions or negatively charged ions. And the body needs those because every time a cell is damaged, it employs those stored ions like a battery to fill the cell with extra voltage to help the cell heal. Now, they can get depleted, which is why, when we walk in nature, if we go to a forest, we're being bathed in negative electrons from the trees and we feel better. Or when we go to the beach, the negative electrons from those rolling waves are filling our body with new electrons, new negative electrons that we can then use to heal ourselves. So it's no coincidence that we feel better when we walk in nature. Well, when you sit in a toroidal field of thousands of negative ions, your body is taking what it needs and replenishing its cells, so the cells can work at optimum electrical capacity. So that in the first instance is really good for you. And then into that field, you've got a pulsed electromagnetic field generator, a PEMF, which is like the bed but slightly different. It works in the box. Through those that voltage field, it emits frequencies, and there are specific frequencies it uses for all kinds of different ailments. So there is something like 1,400 and growing different what we call recipes that biocharger.com, their scientists are always coming up with new recipes, and there are recipes for anything you can imagine, anything from peripheral neuropathy to ethereal sclerosis to help for stroke victims, help with PTSD, all kinds of recipes, help with tendinitis or inflammation or muscle recovery. There's one of the sort of famous things about this machine. It comes from America, and the Dallas Cowboys have one in their dressing room. And there are a number of recipes on here called Cowboys. So Cowboys, positive feelings, Cowboys, muscle recovery, Cowboys this, Cowboys that. And the Dallas Cowboys use it regularly before games to get into the right mindset, after games for muscle recovery. They stick it on all the time. So the Dallas Cowboys, they really swear by it. And Tony Robbins has one, and various other influencers that use it. So, and I've seen myself how profound an effect it can have. So, for example, we had a chap with really quite chronic PTSD, and he'd had it for a long time. He'd been involved in 2 car crashes, one after the other, and it had left him really shaken. His nervous system was, firing on fight or flight all the time, and he would have episodes where he was just so frightened. And we brought him in. He'd heard about us. We brought him in, and he sat on this. And when he came in, he was literally rocking because he was frightened. He was having a PTSD episode. After 20 minutes on this, he was calm. His nervous system had come out of fight or flight into a resting state. He was smiling, and he couldn't believe it. And so he kept coming and kept coming. And now he's fine. He goes out, he walks his dog. He's a changed man. And that's just the PTSD program on this BioCharger.
How amazing. I had someone recently on my podcast, actually, who claims to have cracked the Tesla code, the 369 code.
Right.
And he was talking about the etheric lattice, which I think is probably the Tesla coil that you're talking about. So anyone that wants to find out more about sort of the Tesla technology that's perhaps behind this, do have a look at that. But you mentioned the toroidal field, and people might not know what that is, and how that operates within this BioCharger.
Well, a toroidal field is like a donut. We have one, actually. Our own heart produces a toroidal field. So it comes out like this, and it goes back in, and comes out and goes back in. So you can imagine in 3D a donut doing this all the time. The energy goes up through. So the heart does it as well. The energy goes up, around, down, up, around, down. So imagine that in 3D, about 6 feet. A radius of about 6 feet from the BioCharger, you have this big toroidal field. So when you're sitting inside it, the electrons are spinning out like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, because we have it as well, don't we? When we so that's interesting.
Yeah.
So is there some sort of resonance that starts to happen there, do you feel?
Well, in the first instance, you're just getting bathed in negative ions, like going to a forest. You are getting that massive increase in voltage to help cellular repair. And in the second instance, you're getting the frequencies emitted in that toroidal field. So you're sitting within a field of frequency, if you like, so that the frequencies also have their effect. For example, 40 hertz can reduce inflammation. There are studies into 40 hertz reducing the effects of Alzheimer's now. Also Parkinson's disease. Different frequencies have been found to do different things. So when I say recipe on this, there'll be a recipe, and it will have certain different frequencies that they put together that last half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever. I think that the longest one is 45 minutes. There's one called Pineal Mastery, and it's 45 minutes long, and when we're in the mood we go on that and meditate.
And then you're zoned out for the next month.
Yeah, can't work after that one.
So you also have quite a lot of technology that's used for physical stuff, pain and physical injuries. Yeah. Can you talk to some of that technology?
Yeah, so PEMF it stands for pulsed electromagnetic frequency. So it's a way of delivering frequency. PEMF comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. There are PEMFs you can get for horses, and they're a big sort of coil which emits a pulse, and you can have different settings for that pulse, or different settings that make it more intense. And horses wear them. They use them on race horses. They put them over the horse's head after a race, and it helps with muscle recovery and inflammation support, and helps the horses recover quickly from a race, and also helps to tone their muscles. It's been used by high-end race horses for a long time, and it's only come into human use quite recently. You can also get PEMF in the form of beds. You lie on the bed and you have copper coils inside the mattress. And when you put a pulsed frequency through it of different intensities and different kinds of, the rapidity of the pulse is the frequency. So when we say 40 hertz, it's pulsing at 40 oscillations per minute, per second, 40 oscillations per second. And that's what we call a frequency. So you can get different recipes on a PEMF bed. This has a PEMF emitter in it as well, also emitting a pulse.
And you can feel the pulse, can't you? I have been on the PEMF PMF. Sorry, I'm not getting the letters right there. PEMF bed. And you can hold something and actually feel that as well.
Yeah, right. It's quite subtle, but if you hold a magnet next to the bed, you can feel it through the magnet. And there are PEMFs that they're making now, PEMFs that are less subtle, that you can really just feel by lying on them. They're getting more intense. I think people like to feel because they feel like something's happening. But
you get bathed in, it's an infrared light as well, don't you, whilst you're on that bed, which is really lovely, and that in itself feels very healing, particularly this in the winter and this time of year.
So we have an infrared panel which lies over the top of the PEMF bed. So you lie on the PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field bed, and it has a synergistic effect really, because you can feel the PEMF working on you, and then the red light above, which is a combination of infrared and red. And we have that pulsing usually at 528 hertz, and 528 hertz is the heart frequency, which also reduces inflammation and helps with pain relief. And so the two working together have been found to have a synergistic effect. It's more than the sum of its parts, if you like. So people love lying on the bed and having the red light above them because it feels like they're lying on a beach. They often say that coming out. I feel like I've been lying on a tropical beach for half an hour. So which is really nice. It gets the body into a really relaxed state. We also have, talking about the other machines, we also have a crystal bed, and that is, it's a bed and it's heated, and it contains tiny chips of amethyst throughout the whole bed in sort of stripes. And you lie on that, and as it's heated, the amethyst gives off a kind of piezoelectricity, and it also gives off negative ions. So again, it's like, visiting a forest, but you're lying down and you're nice and warm. And that has a very, it's incredibly relaxing. When people go on it, they get into a really relaxed state. It sort of just takes you under, so that you're really relaxed. And so when you're in that state, the body can regenerate. It can use those negative ions that are being emitted. And then you can rise and feel regenerated. I always use it when I get sort of partway through a day, and sometimes if I haven't slept well, or, it's been particularly busy, I might just feel like, oh God, I just feel really tired. And I'll go on the bed for half an hour and I'm like, oh, I can get on with my day now. I feel a kind of regenerated feeling, it's wonderful, restorative. It's restorative. Just a little word about FSM, frequency specific microcurrent. It's a tiny box, really, and it runs on batteries. And it has two channels. Channel A emits one frequency, and channel B emits another frequency. And the FSM team, the frequency specific microcurrent team that have been instrumental in bringing it back to clinical practice, have found that if you have the frequency for the condition, let's say inflammation, 40 hertz, if you put that on channel A, and the frequency for a tissue type, or so they found that 191 hertz relates to tendons, or 77 hertz relates to connective tissue. If you put that on channel B, it seems to work together. The two work together to reduce inflammation in the tendon or in the connective tissue or whatever it is. So when I put recipes, if you like, or programs together, I use on channel A, I'll use the condition. There are repair frequencies, there are reduction in inflammation frequencies, there are reduction in scarring frequencies, all those frequencies. And then on channel B, I will do all the different tissue types. So we think of the body in terms of tissue type, because everything is made of a kind of tissue, from bones to, the heart wall, to veins, to the different kinds of muscles we have. They're all different kinds of tissue types. So they all can carry their own frequency. And organs too carry a frequency. So we can reduce pain, we can reduce musculoskeletal issues using FSM. I've been trained in sports FSM and advanced FSM, and I also trained as a sports massage therapist, so I can use it for musculoskeletal issues. It's also being used by functional medicine doctors and dentists and all kinds of people for the relief of pain and for the rapid improvement in symptoms. So it's delivered. Usually I put people on the crystal bed, so they already have a nice heated mattress to lie on. And then I just, I use hot, wet towels. I insert electrodes into those hot, wet towels, just using crocodile clips. And then we might put a wet, hot towel at the neck and at the feet, and then we deliver the frequency through the body. And because it's microcurrent, the body doesn't feel the current. It works at a level that the body's own current works. So our body has its own microcurrents. How we deliver, electrical signals through our nerve impulses, for example, is a microcurrent. So the body isn't disturbed by a higher current than it needs to be. So it's 1,000 times less than a TENS machine, for example. People may be aware of TENS machines. They're used for pain reduction, but you can feel it when you put a TENS machine on your body. You can feel the current.
And they're quite popular, aren't they? They're kind of more known, aren't they? The TENS machine.
That's right.
That's a microcurrent as well, is it?
No, it's 1,000 times higher the current than a microcurrent machine. I
see.
So the FSM team, it believes that when it's a microcurrent and the body can't feel it, the body isn't disturbed by that current. And so it can just be receptive to the frequencies that are being carried in that current. So that's the thinking behind it. There are quite a few studies now around FSM for pain relief, for inflammation support, even for PTSD, again, trauma release, emotional release. I find that when we first start to use FSM on a client, we do something called the concussion protocol. Because everybody is carrying around a certain amount of low-level trauma from life experiences. So we want to clear that first, so the body is completely receptive to the healing frequencies. So, when we have everything's trauma, really, life on Earth is quite traumatic. So, even something small like a near miss in a car, or something larger like the death of a loved one, or a divorce, or a particularly stressful week where you've had to listen to terrible stories told to you by other people. So what happens on a level in the body is that the medulla, which is in the brainstem, it becomes slightly inflamed, and because the vagus nerve comes out of the medulla and sends its messages from the body through the medulla to the pituitary gland, which then helps to regulate the homeostasis in the body. When the medulla is slightly inflamed by all this stress and it's slightly what you call concussed, the vagus nerve can't get the messages through. So what we do with the concussion protocol is we calm the vagus nerve, we calm the medulla, we bring the pituitary gland back online, and we make that cycle work better. And people find that their digestion gets better and that their sleep patterns improve, because the vagus nerve, it's everywhere. It's called vagus because it has a vagrant quality. It starts in the medulla, it innervates through the heart, the lungs, the stomach. We don't even know where it goes. It hasn't really been completely mapped out, the vagus nerve, because it becomes part of the nervous system quite quickly and ends up somewhere in the intestines. So, but it's more and more considered something of a motivator, especially using any kind of frequency medicine, because the vagus nerve is a really important part of the nervous system. And when it is relaxed and resonating properly, everything works better. The body is able.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's become a bit of a buzzword, biohacking, and ways, particularly we can kind of biohack the vagus nerve, by using cold therapy, or I think there's even devices that you can put on your ears and stuff like that to help bring the vagus nerve back into balance. How does the frequency medicine sit with this, other than, in terms of biohacking, other than what you've just talked about there?
Well, when a lot of scientific studies are looking at what they call the mechanism of action, why does the frequency work on the body in the way that it does? And there are a couple of reasons that they've come up with. And one of them is that it relaxes the vagus nerve. It seems to bring the vagus nerve into resonance. Another reason is that the body is 70% water, or even more, according to some people, and that the vibrations are working in the fluid parts of our body to bring the body into resonance. So I think it's partly both, but the vagus nerve is a big part of it, I think.
I think so, and I think it's quite new in a way. A lot of therapies had missed this piece about the vagus nerve. So yeah, I think that it's the conversations about this are going to become increasingly popular, as is the whole frequency technology. Yes. I'm interested really as well, because what you're talking about with your frequency machines, you've mentioned that dentists have them, and but ultimately they'd still be considered alternative at this stage, and the way I see it is that, going back to Einstein's quote in the beginning, that this is the medicine of the future, and certainly, it sits much more parallel, with quantum physics and some of the modern science, that we're kind of the medicine as we know it is in the old paradigm, as it were. So I was interested as to why you think, that this technology is still considered alternative, and how you see it might become mainstream in the future.
I think, there are, I think, without getting too political, there are vested interests in the way medicine is done at the moment in the mainstream, and has been done for a long time, say 100 years or so. And these technologies, they have been around for longer than we think. So, for example, FSM, frequency specific microcurrent, was around in the 1910s, 1920s, and even before that. So we had Tesla, and we had Lukovsky, and we had Gurvich, who was doing experiments into light therapy, and Rife, Raymond Royal Rife, or Royal Raymond Rife, I never get that right, who was alive in the early part of the 20th century, looking at how frequencies behave, how parasites behave when certain frequencies are emitted to them. And a lot of research went on then, and a lot of that research has been lost. And they were viable studies. Royal Rife was considered a genius in his day, but then he was attacked and discredited. You can formulate your own reasons why that happened. But his experiments were reproducible, and other doctors, while they didn't believe him, would go to see him and discover that his experiments were reproducible, and once they'd seen the evidence for themselves, also sung his praises. Now, that was all about 100 years ago. Around about 1910, there was a guy called Senator Flexner in America. He brought out something called the Flexner Report, which it sort of tied the knot on pharmaceutical and surgical medicine. So it said, unless it's produced pharmaceutically, unless it's surgery, it can't be licensed. So all the results that were being got by chiropractors and dentists and osteopaths and chemists, who all had FSM machines, Rife machines, that they were absolutely, literally rife, if you excuse the pun, in America at that time, and probably in England as well. We don't know. But it's all been, that history has gone. It's
really interesting you should say that, because Craig, who I had on recently, that says he solved the 369 Tesla code, he spoke about, a lot of Tesla's notes going missing. Yeah. And that's why, the free energy and a lot of the information from that hasn't been able to be utilized, so this is why it's so groundbreaking, the technology that that you're using is available for people, and someone like Craig is he's written his book, it's out there. And so, I mean, I said to Craig, I'm going to be directing people, like yourself, to his incredible podcast, to his book, because people can start. He's saying he doesn't want to keep it to himself, he wants to share this information. So then people could start to build on this in their own areas of research. So it's absolutely fabulous stuff.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, that's when you said that Tesla's some of Tesla's notes were lost. Royal Rife had his laboratory basically set on fire twice. He had it set on fire. He lost everything that was in that laboratory, including his notes. And then he built it all up from scratch again. And then I believe it was set on fire again. And it takes a lot to build a laboratory. You have to have funding, and it's a lot to lose. So this is one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of what Rife discovered, except through other people that took on that mantle. I mean, there were other people that went on with that research. So, today, in today's world, we're really just beginning again. We kind of know it works, but we need to prove it works to the mainstream.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Sorry, interrupting you, but I have to get this in, because I feel like we are beginning again. But my conversation with Craig, he says all this information is encrypted in the pyramids, and it's actually more ancient than 100 years ago.
Oh, yes,
and he's actually able to decode a lot of this. So actually what we're doing is remembering. And a lot of people are, as the energies and frequency rise, are able to decode and bring this information through. As it's like searching for the breadcrumbs, because there is some of the information from Tesla and other people available, and those with a scientific mind are able to decode now. So it's an incredible, exciting time, where we're remembering and bringing this knowledge back to life, where we can utilize these technologies. Because I have heard that like the cleanup of the planet, with technologies, it can actually happen very quickly. Our bodies can be restored very quickly when we're in these new frequencies and restorative frequencies that you're working with. Do you have any thoughts about that?
When you say about the pyramids, absolutely. Yes, that I think that we've been through, if you like, the age of Kali, that was the age of forgetting. And I think before this age came online, and I think we're coming to the end of it and possibly the beginning of the next one. I think before Kali, we knew all of this. And I've done my own reading about the pyramids, and the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber.
Yes.
Emits a certain frequency. I think
it's a portal. I understand.
Yeah,
it's 150
megahertz. And the King's Chamber itself resonates at something slightly higher. And so the King's Chamber and the sarcophagus together do something that's a bit like a heartbeat. It comes into resonance with a heartbeat, because it's a slightly higher and a slightly lower frequency, which matches an average heartbeat. And yeah, I think that's incredibly exciting. And I think that, we're just starting to scratch the surface of that. And like you say, scientific minds are able to go and, with that in mind, look for those resonances. And
really,
they were used as healing chambers.
It really is exciting. And the shift of the ages that you talked about from Kali, I believe it's into Satya, which is the age of truth.
Yes.
So, we are going to see more and more of the truth, including in these technologies that are beneficial. So that's super exciting. There's a big area we haven't talked about yet, which I really want to get onto, and that's the Bioresonance, which I believe is like a scanning type machine that enables you to diagnostic type usage. Can you speak about that?
Yes. I mean, I wanted just to go back to your earlier point about how we can bring these things back into the mainstream. Some good news is that some hospitals are now using photobiomodulation, which is it used to be called cold laser therapy. We have our own Thor laser, which delivers photobiomodulation, and that's it's a laser cluster that delivers certain frequencies of near infrared light at a level which is very intense and can be used on parts of the body. And it's had amazing results on things like there is something that you get when you've had a lot of chemotherapy, which is when the mucus in your mouth dries up and the mouth becomes very sore. And some hospitals are now using Thor lasers to reverse that, that mucosal problem. And also dentists are starting to use it. So it is starting, that part of it is starting to be recognized. Certainly red light and infrared therapy is starting to be recognized. But to go back to the bioresonance, there are a number of bioresonance machines. We use the Biophilia, which basically you sit in front of the machine and you put on some headphones and hold a copper coil, a bit like a Rife machine really, and it pings the body. It sort of listens in to your central nervous system where all the messages are coming and going from the body to the brain. And when it listens into those messages, it can pick up certain frequencies and discover where certain organs and certain tissues may be out of balance, may be low in energy, may have a certain pathology signature. It's incredibly sensitive. So you have to be quite careful with these machines because they will show pathologies that haven't actually shown up symptomatically yet. They're kind of showing you the picture of where you're heading if you don't change direction, you know. So it can be a wake-up call to go to have a biophilia scan. But they are remarkable. I mean, they also show, you know, vitamin deficiencies. So instead of, you know, taking potluck with vitamins, you can get a table of what you actually need and how much of it you actually need, where you're very deficient, where you're only a little bit deficient. It also shows up heavy metals in the body, so, you know, or parasites. And heavy metals and parasites tend to go hand in hand. So, you know what sort of detox you should be doing. And yeah, it shows up pretty much every pathology you've ever heard of. And you tend to get patterns. I mean, I've done quite a lot of biophilias now on clients. You tend to get patterns. And the reason that we have become more and more holistic in our approach using nutrition is because the biophilia shows up arteriosclerosis, which is caused by diet, osteoporosis, which can be reversed using dietary measures. And they, time and time again, heart disease, the pancreatitis and leading to, diabetes. You can see the patterns, the sort of echoes of where you're heading if you don't stop eating these certain foods, and switch to more healthy foods. Time and time again, you see the same patterns, and we know now it's the Western diet. So
your diagnosis, once you've found out what's going on, is it mostly based on supplements and change of diets, or do you make other recommendations, or do you outsource? Do you often say you need to go and see so and so?
Yes, it really does depend. I mean, if it was musculoskeletal, to do with the spine being unaligned or having impinged nerves, we would recommend going to a chiropractor because, working on the spine physically is really the best way to sort that out. We recommend nutritional, for example, I know people are vegan and vegetarian, but actually, B12 is really important. It helps to metabolize the iron that you're taking in. And a lot of vegans and vegetarians are B12 deficient. So, we recommend finding a way of getting B12 into you. So one of those is bone broth, bone broth or eating a little bit of meat. But if that's too much, there are other vegan ways of getting B12 into you and getting those, the collagen. I mean, bone broth is full of collagen, and that can help with osteoporosis. And there are different sort of methods of reversing. Arteriosclerosis, for example, B3 or niacin is really a great mover of arterial plaque. or third arteries, other things like cayenne pepper, that these are all old home remedies, but they all work. There was a reason why people used them for so long. They did. But we also do recommend, where people are struggling with something that's quite, major, we recommend different technologies, the BioCharger quite often, because there's so many recipes on that. The BioCharger can help with things like addiction, and we all have sugar addiction, for example. It can help with that. It can help to entrain the brain so that you don't reach for the sugar every time.
Well, that's the thing. Often we're just feeding our addictions and we don't even realize it. And that's the danger, of following your body for what food feels good for you and stuff like that, because we can have kind of other things speaking, as it were.
Absolutely. And emotions have a big impact on that. Our emotional state is often the reason why we're putting certain things into our body.
So we have to do all the healing behind all that comfort eating that perhaps came from childhood, all those associations, before we can really start to listen effectively and know that we can trust what our guidance is. It's all absolutely fascinating stuff, Siobhan. There's so much as well. Where can people find you? Because you've got a couple of centres, haven't you, in Glastonbury and in Basingstoke?
Yes, we have. And we'll soon be getting one in Weston-super-Mare as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. We've got a property and we're just, we're just working out the contract at the moment, but that will happen. It'll probably be open April, May this year. The best thing to do is to get our email, to get our web page, our web address, which is frequency-medicine.co.uk, I think. Yes,
I'll put that in the description so people can just copy that.
Yes, that will give you all the addresses, what we have. I mean, there are other things we do that I haven't even spoken about here, which we do vitamin 12 injections, we do PRP, lots of things really. And you can just come and have a cup of tea and talk to us. We like that.
Yeah, it's a lovely you're very generous in that you can, and people come in and chat, and it feels like a bit of a community space as well as a treatment centre, which is really gorgeous. What would you say to people that have listened to all of this and are still feeling skeptical?
Come and try us. Come and have a taster session. Come and see what we do. Look up on AI studies into certain frequencies, and you'll find MIT has done studies. There are a lot of Japanese studies over in the Japanese universities. There are some Russian studies. I mean, the research is available if you want to have a look at what's being studied and the results of that, which are very encouraging. And if you don't believe that, just come and have a go, come and have a little taster session and see how you feel when you sit in front of something like the BioCharger or lie on a crystal bed. See how you feel. The body tells you what it's feeling, and the body is your best guide, really. If it feels good, it's probably good,
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish up today?
Well, we've been doing this now since 2023. It has been a huge learning curve for us. When we first started, we didn't know what to expect. My very first BioCharger session, for example, I felt this weird cold feeling up my spine. I thought, what's that? That feels weird. And then we'd gone to find a BioCharger, and we thought we were going to buy a secondhand one, and then we decided to buy a new one because for what you got for the new one was important to have the onboarding and the ongoing training. But when we went to see this BioCharger in a private home, the owner put us on something called Happy Days, and I was with two friends, and afterwards we went to lunch, and we found we were giggling incessantly, like we were a little bit drunk, and it was early in the day, and we put it down to the fact that we'd had Happy Days on the BioCharger, and it changed our mood and made us really happy. So that was my first inkling as to how it changes you, how it can work on you. Since then,
I had Nirvana. I think you put me on Nirvana. I think I floated out.
Yes. So over the last 2 years, we've had an increasing number of people coming with really quite serious problems. And it's almost like our trainers on both the FSM and the BioCharger told us, you know, when you get more proficient, the more serious conditions will turn up. And it's exactly what happened. So we're dealing with people with more serious conditions now, and we're finding that they get benefit. And when we see someone coming through the door and they're grey-faced and they go on the BioCharger for an hour and they come out and that greyness has gone and they feel more energetic and they're smiling and they think, I feel a bit better, I can get through the day. And they come back again and again and they feel that, you know, instant relief from the, you know, maybe the meds that they're having or the particular treatment that they're getting in the hospital that might be making them more ill. I think we all know what I'm talking about without using the word. They come and use the BioCharger and they feel better and they feel more energized and they feel like they can carry on. So we are so encouraged. Since 2023, we have learned so much, and we are so encouraged by what we're now seeing and the people that we're now able to help with our frequency medicine. And also very encouraged by people from all walks of life. It used to be just sort of, you know, alternative people who are into alternative health, but now it's people from all walks of life.
That's fabulous. Yeah, like I felt it's like a community hub. You know, you're getting all kinds of people in there, and it's a place that people go to feel better, which is incredible.
And they share their stories and they share their tips and they share their, you know, all sorts of things. That's the wonderful thing about it. People talk to each other as well, and it becomes self-supporting.
And that's the way forward, you know, particularly in communities. You know, we need to start building those connections and passing on those wisdoms again.
Yes.
So we can start to really rebuild our communities as well. So Glastonbury's a fabulous. Was that your first one? That's a fabulous natural place to start that, because it's kind of there already in a way, that awareness.
Yes, and during lockdown, or just after lockdown, we had the business that was there was failing, but my online business was working, but the sort of walk-in part wasn't working. So we just sort of became a community center, and out of that goodwill has grown the Frequency Medicine Center. And we have a lady who collects books on alternative health and nutrition, and we've got a really quite a massive library now. We're always looking for more bookshelves because we keep getting more books, which are lining the walls of the reception area and the BioCharger room and the back room now. So people can also join the library and they can take out books on various aspects of health. So
how wonderful.
And it's sort of we love that about it. People just come and use it as a library as well.
How wonderful. Thank you so much for all that you're sharing and all that you're doing, you know, to support your local community and further afield. And you're really showing and demonstrating that this is growing by setting up 3 centres, and that other people can, you know, do the same really in other areas of the country or the world, you know, find out this information.
I'd love to end with that call out, really. We are looking for people who want to do this in their own town. We are actively seeking people, and we will help them set one up in their own town.
Amazing.
We will give them the benefit of what we've learned over the last 2 or 3 years, so that they can sort of hit the ground running, really. So yeah, if there's anybody out there who's interested, get in contact.
We absolutely do. And that's wonderful. There's just so much knowledge there, because Kit as well has a biochem background, doesn't she? So she really understands a lot of the science behind this, which is really incredible.
Yes, she majored in biomedical research. So she was part of the Genome Project at one time, and but became very disillusioned with the pharmaceutical company that she was working for, and sort of that's a whole other story. But she's come round to medicine, you know, frequency medicine is, you know, so she's really excited as well. Kit's my partner.
How wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's just been wonderful chatting with you. And yeah, let's just please do share this and put it out to anyone that you feel would benefit from hearing this information, or anyone that might be interested in setting up their own centre as well. Thank you so much, and bye for now. And thanks everyone for listening today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.